Hello, everyone. This is BigReed with another episode of Gaming's Lost Memories, episode 27, the Nintendo Switch announcement part 2. And today we are going to be focusing on the video games, the vidya games. So I didn't realize that just talking about the Switch 2 announcement and the hardware would have taken an hour. And I didn't want to kind of keep that podcast going. I think focusing on part one, which was the announcement, the hardware, the cost, some of the feedback, the strategies, the launch date, the potential delay with the pre-ordering. I felt like that was a lot of meat and potatoes there. And I wanted to separate the podcast into two parts, with part two focusing on the games. So even just writing out some games, so I wrote out about like 10 or 11 games I kind of want to just spend a little bit of time on. I think Nintendo not only did a good job of speaking about their hardware and being very clear and concise with that, but I also don't think they messed around with showing the software. So it's very clear that Nintendo has a strategy for the Switch 2 software, knowing that there's going to be a transitionary period between hardware, like there always is. So a new console comes out, you have your launch titles, and then you're going to have a little bit of downtime because Nintendo has a lot of development studios internally. Obviously, they have some second party development studios as well. And then, as always, you want to foster an environment that promotes third party creativity and partnership that aligns with the hardware that you're making. Because at the end of the day, there's not going to be that one game that for every single person out there that makes it a must-buy system. Now, I'm going to push back on that a little bit since we jump into the software with the first game. But saying all of that, you need a variety of games. So Nintendo just can't do it themselves. Now, the first four games we're going to go over, they're kind of showcasing that they can have different strategies, they can have different genres they can tap into. And frankly, I don't think there's another game company out there that can do what Nintendo can do from a development standpoint. It's crazy, but they just have like an endless amount of intellectual properties, and they're always willing to try new things and be creative. And sometimes it doesn't work, and then sometimes it really works. Just like thinking just off the top of my head, with the original Switch, Splatoon 3 sold like 20 million copies or something like that, and you're just like, what? Like, I've never even played a Splatoon game, but it's like, oh no, it's extremely popular. And it's pretty new. I think all three of them were on the Switch series of consoles. So Nintendo, their job now through 2025 is to get the hardware out, get it into hands, differentiate the platform by having games that can only run on the Switch 2, and also segue your Switch base into the Switch 2. And you can do that with a variety of means. The first is backwards compatibility. So awesome, any game I already own, I can play, and it's going to run better on the Switch 2. Then there's also going to be specific upgrade packs, some free, some paid, for very popular Switch games, where if you already have a Switch game, you want to play it on the 2. So there's a lot of games that they have ready for this first year that I think are going to be really good. And I kind of wanted to cover some of the ones that I'm excited about. So we'll start off with Mario Kart. So we will have a brand new Mario Kart game at launch as a software pack-in if you buy the $500 bundle. So you get a little bit of a discount. So game prices are high. You're going to get a little bit of discount if you bundle it in. You're able to find a Switch 2 with it. One of the highlights that for me, so I've played pretty much every single Mario Kart out there, all the way from the Super Nintendo till now. And honestly, in my opinion, Mario Kart is Nintendo's most accessible and easy to market game titles. And the Wii U had Mario Kart 8, which was absolutely phenomenal. Not only was it a gorgeous game, it was extremely fun to play. It was fast paced. It had an online component. I think it's the best Mario Kart game ever. So we'll see how Mario Kart World does. But Mario Kart 8 was brilliant. And they made a deluxe version for the Switch, and that was sold from basically launch. That sold like 50 million copies. So Mario Kart is going to be their killer app, as they used to say. And once again, we just kind of stated too that not everyone's going to want Mario Kart. And when I was sitting down talking with my friends, one of them was like, "Hey, I don't really like Mario Kart," and I'm like, "I'm with you. Like, Mario Kart's going to be my gateway into it, but then I'm gonna stay for a lot of the other games and RPGs, a lot of third party content that I've really been wanting to play on the Switch." So Mario Kart looks absolutely awesome. It has the new Donkey Kong, which is really funny. It looks more like the movie, and I'm not against it. We've had the angry looking rare Donkey Kong for like 20 plus years. So I know it is surprising to see when like Donkey Kong just looks kind of happy in it, but they're adding a lot more characters. Like I saw Waluigi, I saw the cow from Moo Moo Farms. That's going to be awesome. Looks like there's going to be new items. I think the feather is going to allow you to like grind on rails and everything like that. And what's really cool is they were discussing the Grand Prix. And before you would have 4 races, right? And, after the first race, there's a break in between. Then you set it for the second race. It's going to be really interesting to see how this goes, especially online. But they're eliminating a lot of the downtime. So it's like you go into your Grand Prix and you drive to the next course and you're traveling around the world. And all the courses are going to be reflective of the themes of those areas of the world. But I thought that was really interesting, where instead of that downtime where, you get the did you win screen and they're showing replays and everybody's cheering, you're going to drive to the second course, the third course, the fourth course. Now, the plus side to that is it makes the game more engaging and interactive as you kind of like, it makes it feel like you're traveling around the world, and there's no downtime. The only downside is like after a race, you grab a drink, you're goofing around, and then like it's getting set up for the next race. So I think online might be a little bit different, and I don't know if we got that information out there already. Just kind of hitting the high notes here. The second thing that looked very interesting was being able to drive around and drive off course. Now, I feel like that's something that I'm going to have to experience to really wrap my head around it, but it seems kind of crazy that you can just like drive anywhere and the courses and world are going to be absolutely massive. I really did feel like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe was going to be a tough one to follow, just because, with Mario Kart 8, they even put some of the gravity-based gameplay in that you would see in like F-Zero. So it felt like Nintendo was going to take any of their characters and ideas and not leave anyone out. Like Link is in, Mario Kart. Animal Crossing characters are in Mario Kart. So it seems like they knew they had a big homework assignment and they're really trying to differentiate this new Mario Kart. I think it's going to be the killer app. I think it's what's going to sell the console early on. And just from like a marketing standpoint, like I look at, just my household, and if I was going to pick one game to buy for like everybody to play and to have fun with, and like, all the kids and everything like that, it's definitely Mario Kart. So it was actually really nice to see a new one at launch. And I think Nintendo was smart here. So they did a deluxe version of an existing Mario Kart game that probably didn't hit the masses because the Wii U didn't sell anything. But I think they realized that they need a really solid game to not only pack in with the console, as an option to help sell the hardware, but as just hey, we need to cover our bases and get this into the hands of people that might ultimately wait to purchase this console. Now, my opinion is it's going to sell really well at launch. I don't know if it's going to sell as well as a Switch. It's kind of hard to feel it, but everybody's talking about it. It was on the Tonight Show. My wife and I were sitting down and it was like, oh, the Switch 2 pre-order was delayed. And I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting to see that on, a YouTube clip of the Tonight Show. But yeah, kicking it off is Mario Kart. Everybody's going to love it. It looks awesome. Looks like they threw some innovation in it and continued to differentiate, each title. The second one, so Game 2, Donkey Kong Bonanza. Now, this is my number one. It's an exclusive game. It's a brand new Donkey Kong game. It looks awesome. It's 3D, so everyone kind of got scared because Donkey Kong 64 was it was what it was. Kind of left a little to be desired. And honestly, the 2D Donkey Kong games, it's not like we've been starved of Donkey Kong. Thank goodness, because I really do think it is a really good property that Nintendo has. I think Donkey Kong, is goofy, likable. He doesn't really talk much, but the 2D gameplay was really good. The most recent ones, what is it, Donkey Kong anyway, the two that were on basically the last like 6 Nintendo consoles, Tropical Freeze and the original one, I thought those were awesome, and they did a really good job of being difficult and having that challenge that the other the 2D Donkey Kong games had, while also offering some options to make it a little bit easier for newcomers. But Donkey Kong Bonanza looks absolutely awesome. It looks like to me a cross between Super Mario Odyssey and Ratchet and Clank, and I don't generally like comparing Nintendo titles to non-Nintendo titles because most of the time, like 95% of the time, Nintendo came up with the idea first and somebody copied them. Sony is just ridiculously guilty of this. If they see Nintendo doing anything that's successful, they just rip it off immediately, and most of the time don't do it as well. So I don't like comparing it to Ratchet and Clank. I do enjoy Ratchet and Clank, but you have fully destructible environments. You're like going through under the ground. It looks like it has 2D segments. It looks gorgeous. And it's also, once again, the new Donkey Kong anesthetic. So I feel like this title is going to sell surprisingly well. I'm not really sure how well the other 2D ones sold, but I have a feeling like Donkey Kong's going to come out of the woodwork here and sell like 15 to 20 million copies, and just going to be everybody who has a Switch 2 is going to be purchasing that game. Obviously, Mario Kart, I think, is going to be probably the Switch 2's best-selling game, just because it's going to be at launch. They're going to sell it for 7 years. It's going to be a pack-in title. But Donkey Kong actually got me excited because you see a fresh take on that series. We get the series back, thank goodness, because like I'm already like desiring for Nintendo to bring like Star Fox and F-Zero back and like really try to see if there's a way to make an innovative new title that resonates with fans. It worked with Metroid to a lesser degree, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but I want to focus on just Donkey Kong Bonanza and kind of wrap this part up. It looks phenomenal, fully destructible environments, 3D Donkey Kong, but it looks good. And like I said, the best way that I can describe it is Mario Odyssey meets Ratchet and Clank. And that's probably the exclusive that I'm most excited about. Now, saying that, the next one was an extremely pleasant surprise. We didn't get much on it, but we did get a cool clip for Kirby Air Riders. So, Kirby's Air Ride, my mother, bless her heart, when I forget how old I was, but for my birthday, she took me to Toys R Us, and they had like a buy one, get one sale, or buy two, get one sale, or something like that. And I remember I got Soul Calibur 2 and Kirby Air Ride, and she really wanted to hold Soul Calibur 2 for my birthday, and I got Kirby Air Ride early, which was so nice of her. It was like just... I look back at a few things that my mother did for me like that, and it was like very clear that she was trying to show her, her love through that way. But it was, man. So long story short, I had to hold back for Soul Calibur 2. So I remember I was playing Kirby Air Ride, and I was like showing one of my friends that game, and it was like, oh, what about Soul Calibur 2? And it's like, oh yeah, that I have to wait a few weeks for, or a couple weeks for my birthday. So I have a fond memory of Kirby Air Ride. From what I can recall, there was like racing, but I remember there was like a single player giant like world. No, I shouldn't say giant, but like a city, and like you would like fly around the city and everything like that. But the teaser trailer for it was perfect, and I'm very curious if they're going to make this a racer-esque type of game, or if they're going to try to add a more prominent single player exploration. Like you're flying around, but there's going to be, more of a traditional Kirby experience to a certain degree. Is there, first of all, Kirby was my first gaming love. I love Kirby. I love all the Kirby games. They're all amazing. I played the gateway into Kirby games for me was Kirby's Dream Land on the Game Boy, which I still think, I mean, you can beat it in like 45 minutes, but it's still awesome. It's fun. The games only got better. They tagged so much innovation in those games too, just like, different items giving you powers. Like it really, they did so well with that series. And what I like about Kirby in particular is Nintendo's very experimental with them. You have Kirby's Epic Yarn, the DS one. I cannot remember what that one's called. But anyway, like you draw Kirby's a little ball that's going forward, and you draw like the platforming elements to move him along. There's been a like putt golf Kirby. There's been Kirby for every type. Anytime Nintendo wants to make something weird, they're like, give us Kirby, we'll figure it out. So I think Air Riders is going to be just another really good title. Now, what I would like to see is enough that differentiates it from Mario Kart. Because having two like first party based, IP racers, I think that's a lot, but I also feel that there's a lot of that excitement because certain games honestly were trapped on the GameCube, which we'll touch on later. And frankly, out of every console that I played, like any of the older consoles, the GameCube is the biggest pain in the butt to play effectively in the modern day. And the reason I say that is they had the component cables, but they had, oh my gosh, what was it? Not ray scanning. I cannot remember the name of it. Progressive scan. And that was a feature where there's basically like a chip in their component cables. So there's third-party component cables for like $55 on eBay, and then all the other ones I see are like, these don't work. And then you have the, officially branded GameCube ones that they made for 2 years or whatever, and they're like $160. So a lot of GameCube games like Kirby Air Ride were trapped there. So it's really nice seeing that you're going to get everyone hyped up. Sakurai's going to be making it. So I think he honestly is excited to not be making a Smash Brothers game right now. I think that man needs to just go make like 2 games that he wants to make. But I feel like it got a good amount of hype, it looked like, and I think it's going to be pretty popular. And that was another game I was pretty excited about. So this next one could have been bundled in with what we're going to talk about in a second, but I feel like Nintendo is kind of paving the way of like, hey, these last few big Nintendo Switch games, we're going to give you a better option to play them with newer hardware on the Switch 2. So I think it's smart that they've been designed on the Switch, so I think it's smart to kind of release it there as well and not just pull this for the sake of pulling it, but to give consumers an option that if they want to purchase the Switch 2, give them the option to play it with, the enhancements of the better hardware. Metroid Prime 4, okay. So the last few games that I have beaten have all been like really good games, and Metroid Prime Remastered was one of them. The controls are a little goofy. It's kind of funny. One of the other reasons why I feel like stuff got stuck on the GameCube is like the controller is so unique that it's really hard. I don't like playing games on modern Nintendo hardware that had a very unique controller at the time. Like it's just a pain in the butt. Nintendo took that GameCube controller and made Metroid Prime work for that GameCube controller. And yes, it didn't have dual stick control at the time, but it worked for what it was. So even using the dual stick, it was really nice, but it got a little clunky kind of migrating it around. Like switching between the visors, the weapons, in a fast-paced, shoot 'em up environment. Like when you're battling and things going across the screen, it made it a little difficult. So I'm hoping that they are building this game with modern controls and they somehow make it easy to switch between items. But Metroid Prime 4 looks awesome. I'm very happy that we got Metroid Dread. Now, I think it sold like 4 million copies, which is good, but it's not good based upon the other first party games. Like, I honestly, I do not understand why Metroid isn't more popular in terms of sales volume. Like, the games are good. I think people like them. I think people liked Metroid Dread. But it's very surprising to see 4 million copies sold on something that was like, so discussed and loved, and everybody was hyped for it, and it was wanted for a long time. So I still think Metroid is one of their best series, but Prime 4 looks absolutely awesome. Now, this is going to be a Nintendo Switch game, but for the Switch 2, I believe it's going to be considered one of the upgrade packs, or they're releasing a Switch 2 version specifically. Either way, I will be playing it on the Switch 2. I'm excited about it. Metroid Prime was an unexpected game, and honestly, I can't even believe that it worked. But I think it worked because the series encapsulated the Metroid soul so well that even when they transitioned it to 3D, it played like its 2D counterparts. And playing Metroid Prime Remastered, I was like, all right, so I think they got their feet wet. They messed around with the Metroid Prime, and now it's like they can bring a lot of that style of gameplay, exploration, and everything to Metroid Prime 4. So I'm super pumped about it. I'm really hoping that it has a bigger audience than Metroid Dread, because once again, I think selling 4 million copies for that series is just criminally underrated, and ultimately Nintendo, they have so many IPs, and I think if you're making like exactly with the original Switch, it was like let's make the hardware what we want it to do. You can play portable, you can play anywhere, you can pick it up. Okay, now that we have that figured out, we have all of our development teams, because we don't have to have people develop for a 3DS anymore, and just focus on one piece of hardware and just getting these properties out. So I honestly feel like this is a great time for Nintendo to revisit, some of like a Star Fox, like maybe an F-Zero. And they did F-Zero recently with that little F-Zero 99, game, which it wasn't bad. It was very fun, but maybe we can bring Star Fox back as well, which would be wonderful. But to try to stay on topic here, Metroid Prime 4, I'm super excited for. That's going to be a day one purchase for me. And I'm really hoping they can live up to the legacy of the Metroid Prime series, which, geez Louise, is like 25 years old at this time. Okay, so we're going to jump into some third parties here. And I think this was extremely necessary. So we're going to focus on the big third party announcements and why I feel they're important to showcasing this hardware and really ensuring the gaming community what this console is going to be about. Like third-party large games are going to be a big part of the Switch 2 hardware, and now it looks like they're going to have powerful enough hardware to have some of these games be at launch as well, which is absolutely massive in my opinion. Is if we can kind of get some of these bigger titles like in the future Elder Scrolls 4 to release at launch on the Switch 2, that would be a huge win. So if I'm Nintendo, and they've already got off to a good start with some of the games we're about to cover, but I'm out there making sure that I get these dev kits in hands and say, okay, I want this game to launch the same way it launches on PC, the same way it launches. Like, how do I help you? How do we facilitate this? How do we come to an agreement that makes this a lot easier for you? Because what you kind of don't want is the Switch got away with it a little bit because it was powerful enough to run most of these games decently. But I will say, you don't want like from the Wii U and before, whenever Nintendo started waning with third-party support, you don't want them to make the game and then port it to the Switch like 6 months later. I think to really showcase, I think the launch dates need to align for some of these games. Mainly one in particular we'll talk about. But let's kick it off with Elden Ring and Duskbloods. So From Software, creators of Demon Souls, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, all that good stuff. Elden Ring, probably the most prolific developers in the last 15 years. And the way that I describe these games, so if you have not played Dark Souls or any of these games, the best way that I can describe them is, the original Legend of Zelda came out, and it set the template for adventure games. Like, it's the granddaddy of, action adventure games, whatever you want to categorize them as. But that was the template. And honestly, I don't feel like everybody copied everything that Zelda did, because you had to, right? Now you could say, oh, there was this game. Okay, just listen to me here. It's the same thing with Mario and platformers. Like, you can say, oh yeah, there's a bunch of other platformers, but honestly, with Mario, everybody basically copies like the core concepts of it. Now, they might do it a little bit differently. They might integrate platforming and everything like that into other experiences and add RPG elements, yada yada. But for me, and how I kind of view it, even though the games are hopeless and not happy, if you read any of the lore, it's just everything's just sad, everything's dead. You're just like traversing through a decaying, dying world most of the time. But they are the next revolution of, adventure games. You could categorize them as RPGs too, but like the overall grand adventure, like you have Zelda who set all these templates, and I really feel like the only game that took adventure games and took this type of experience and re-envisioned it and remastered it and made it their own is the Dark Souls series. So Demon Souls, Dark Souls. I'm just going to probably say Dark Souls just to make it a little bit easier, even though Demon Souls came first. So it paid homage to what makes Zelda Zelda and the games that have come before it, but it did it in a brand new and unique way. And now it's almost annoying. I know what games to avoid if I'm going to be purchasing a game at this point, because like if it comes out and it's like, this is like Dark Souls meets, my ears are already off, because everybody and their brother has copied Dark Souls elements of making games harder, challenging, etc. But Elden Ring, so I got it on the Xbox when I had my Xbox. I got a PlayStation 5 for Christmas. There's no way I can have both of those consoles. It's redundant for me at this time in my life, and I normally keep everything, but I was able to sell that Xbox and give it a good home elsewhere and get a good amount of money back from it, almost exactly what I paid for it, which is pretty cool. But I have the PlayStation 5, so my Elden Ring copy was on the Xbox, and I remember thinking, I'm like, I just wish I could play this on the Switch. I just want to play these games on the Switch. And Elden Ring, the Tarnished Edition, is coming to the Nintendo Switch 2. Thank goodness, day one purchase for me. I am pumped. I am excited. Give it to me. I'm assuming they're just going to integrate the online. I hope that they make the game's controls match the Switch. In Dark Souls Remastered, which was on the original Switch, they kept the PlayStation controls and just made B select everything, which just feels weird on the Switch. Like you want to press the A button. So I'm hoping it is a port that gets a little bit more love, and they make it specifically control style to the Switch, but they have time. And I think that one's going to sell pretty decently well. But their most exciting one, I was very happy with with Elden Ring. I was like, okay, we good. I like this. This makes me happy. But the real surprise and winner here was Duskbloods, which there were several times while I was watching the trailers where I was like, oh my God, this was one of them. And we're going to take some of this with a grain of salt. So it's coming out in 2026. It is a From Software exclusive title, and Bloodborne was a PS4 exclusive, and it's pretty much stuck there from what I'm understanding. I don't know if there's like an effective way to play that game. Maybe it's on the PS5. You can play it backwards compatible, but it's a game that people are clamoring for a sequel for. And of course, From Software, just, everything they make, you can tell it's largely the same gameplay style. But they freaking crapped out Elden Ring, and it's just like they're never gonna. They're just gonna keep being innovative, keep doing their thing, and they should, because until they make a misstep, like all of their games share common themes and play very similarly. However, Elden Ring was just perfect. So Bloodborne was awesome. Now, don't get me wrong. Now there's werewolves, there's monsters, they're talking about blood, moon gods coming down the moon. It's set in like a steampunk creepy monster London. It is just such a weird game, and it's amazing and it's awesome to play. But there's been so many rumors of there's going to be a Bloodborne 2, there's going to be a Bloodborne 2, and it's not happening. Now, how does this relate to the Duskbloods, and why are we talking about this so much? So the Duskbloods looks like a spiritual successor to Bloodborne. Now, Duskbloods is a multiplayer game, and I don't really know what that means, because everything that I'm watching, everything that I'm seeing, everything that I'm reading about, they're like, yeah, it's a multiplayer game. So a lot of people are taking that as, something lesser. And they just released an Elden Ring multiplayer game that plays like, you have like 3 days to beat all the bosses, and it's a 3-player game, and they drop you in, you die, you fight. So it almost plays like a Warzone type thing. I think there's a specific term for those types of games, like Warzone, Fortnite. But anyway, point is they did this, recently. And is it going to be in that vein? Like, is it going to be a gameplay gimmick that honestly looks pretty fun? I'm fine with that. Or what do they mean by multiplayer? Because they're saying multiplayer and they're not saying PvP. Because if it was just PvP, I'm not excited. Because I'm just going to go into the game and get my butt kicked by everybody else that's better than me. But if it's a multiplayer game in the sense that you're tackling objectives and like fighting through a From Software type environment, then it looks like a freaking Bloodborne game to me. I don't know how else to describe it. It looks like you're in London. It looks steampunky. They're all talking about blood. It's all creepy and weird. You don't know what's going on. Like you're a vampire type character. There's a gigantic freaking full moon. They're talking about hunts. They basically did everything except say Bloodborne, in the trailer. So this was a shocking surprise and something very good that showed Nintendo's kind of been courting third-party developers here of like, we're going to make a piece of hardware that you want to put your content on. So getting Elden Ring, the Tarnished Edition, is absolutely awesome. And then getting it exclusive with Duskbloods, even if it is a multiplayer game, I think is absolutely huge. I'm very, very excited for that. I'm going to go through a couple more third parties, and then I know where I want to end now. But I think what's important is, as Nintendo, when you look at the Switch 1, there were hardware limitations that made certain games very difficult to exist on that platform. And honestly, you would be asking your third-party counterparts basically for a favor of like, hey, can you get this over? And now this is, happened several times. We have The Witcher 3 got ported over and the team did absolutely phenomenal. And you have certain teams working on these games and getting them over. I'm trying to think of what else. Doom, both Doom and Doom Eternal came over really well. But at this point, some of these bigger games, it's almost like you're calling in a favor if you were to port it to the Switch 1. But with the Switch 2, you're kind of opening up the possibilities of like, hey, this is going to be a really attractive revenue stream for you guys. Like, our player base wants to buy games. So we'll jump right in. Cyberpunk. I think this is absolutely brilliant. I'm hoping that this is done well because the Cyberpunk launch left a lot to be desired based upon a lot of fan feedback. It seemed like they released an incomplete game that wasn't entirely ready. And listen, they were stuck in the situation of we know we're making an extremely popular game mixed with we've already pushed this back a bunch and the hardware keeps changing. The hardware got a lot better and now we're doing this, we're doing that. So I'm excited for it and very curious to see the level of effort that gets put into it. But I think being able to have Cyberpunk on here is just absolutely huge, and it differentiates the hardware immediately. So it's like, yes, this can play Cyberpunk. It's like, oh, okay, like, okay, sweet. Because what that means is you have to be able to play it on the tablet in 1080p. and you have to be able to play it in dock mode. So I like this. I've read that Nintendo's using 1440p for some of their enhancements in docked mode, and then 1080p in non-docked mode for their titles. So I think this is good, and I think it's a good showcase of differentiating the hardware power. This next one appears that it's going to launch at the same time, but Borderlands 4. For any of you that played the Borderlands games, so it's a first-person shooter RPG where you're constantly looting, fighting, doing quests. Like, it's just really easy to pick up and play and fun. And the guy who announced Borderlands 4 for the Switch 2 was super pumped up and excited. So I like that guy. He was bringing a lot of excitement. It felt implied that this was going to launch, at the same time. And I think that would be something really good. If I was Nintendo, I would be like, yo, like, we gave you the dev kit. Is there anything preventing this from being a launch title, or any issues you're having? Can we send some team members there to help you guys optimize the hardware, as you're creating software for it? Like, what can we do to help? Because you're going to want a game like that at launch. Because ultimately, you have to look at the hardware that you're making. So the Switch 2 has a very defining, unique selling factor where you can play it in docked mode, you can pick it up, and literally in half a second, you're instantly basically playing the game as you're like walking into another room or something like that. So it's like a very smooth transition. And to be able to play a game like Borderlands 4, which I think would be great for, you're just kind of playing around and, pausing it. Some of these games I haven't been able to play just because like I cannot sit down at a chair and just like play for 7 hours anymore. It's not possible. I have to get my hours in when I can. It's normally involved with a lot of responsibility, work, kids, like all of that. And I feel like the Switch 2 hardware in particular really, really speaks to me, because it's like, not only can I play my Nintendo games, my Nintendo Switch Online stuff, but if I can get third-party title, I'm buying like everything. I've gone back through, and this is probably my console that I have the most amount of third-party games for. Because it's like, hey, you put in the effort to, like, I'm choosing to purchase the Switch version. You know what I mean? Like, I would rather play that than my PS5, rather play that than my PC, my Xbox, etc. So I'm hoping it's at launch. I'm really hoping that the like co-op online is really easy to do, because I think that's going to pair well with the hardware chat features. Like, I think that'll just be absolutely awesome. But yeah, Borderlands 4, it's another really good one there. This next one, I'm throwing it out there. This comes with a big grain of salt, and at some point I'm going to do a separate podcast specifically on this game and the other games. The Final Fantasy VII remake. So I think it's Intergrade. That is the first. Don't even get me started on this, but it's the first of 3 games, I believe, for the Final Fantasy VII remake. They didn't mention anything with the second one, which has already come out, but this is important for Square. I think there is a Nintendo audience that misses Final Fantasy games. I think Final Fantasy VII, regardless of what you think of the remake, is a very popular game. And I think coming out on the Switch 2, this can sell a few million copies. And if you continue that partnership, and I think this is very important for Square Enix to reevaluate kind of keeping Final Fantasy exclusively, so to speak, to the PlayStation brand. Sony's got to be paying out the butt for that to make sense at this point anymore. Their most successful Final Fantasies were multi-platform. I mean, obviously, you just have the largest amount of player base. And I think excluding Nintendo at this point just doesn't make sense. I feel like there's a lot of Switch fans that want to play the Final Fantasy VII remake. You don't necessarily want to buy a PlayStation 5 for it. But even for me, once again, the biggest proposition here is I have to sit down for 40 hours and look at a monitor. And I don't have that in me anymore. I don't like it. I don't know if it's because I have ADHD or I'm just like, bouncing around and moving around too much. But I just prefer now to be able to play where I'm at. Like, physically where I'm at, that's where I want to be able to play. And there's nothing wrong with sitting down and gaming like that. But I think I'm going to give the Final Fantasy VII Remake a try after swearing off of it. And that's a podcast for another time. But once again, I think it's like really important to rebuild some of these relationships. And from Square, I think they need to reevaluate their strategy for launching titles. And I feel like this is a good start. If this game comes out and sells a couple million copies, that's pretty substantial. It doesn't seem like it. I think the Final Fantasy VII Remake, I think the first version sold like 7 or 8 million copies. Then, second game sold half. But that's a problem. So, not to go too much into Final Fantasy, I think this is really smart on their end. And this is really great for Nintendo to kind of rebuild that partnership and say, okay, we got the first one. Hey, it sold a couple million copies. Can we get the second one? Sell another couple million copies, right? We want to make this easy for you. Get those dev kits out there. And then when the conclusion of the Final Fantasy VII Remake game comes out, that needs to be a Switch 2 launch title. No more messing around. No more waiting. Like, that's where we need to be for these launch titles. So I'm excited for Final Fantasy VII, but just looking at that, Cyberpunk, Borderlands 4, Final Fantasy VII Remake, like, these are the big hitters. We're not at this podcast. We're not going to cover like the indie stuff and the smaller games, even though there are so many that I'm very excited for. Kind of want to keep it high level here. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about are the upgrade packs. So what does that program look like? What does it mean? So there's going to be Switch 1 and Switch 2 versions of, some of the games like Metroid Prime 4, like the new Pokemon game coming out. But even some games they're going to be going back through, and if you have a Nintendo Switch Online account, both Zelda games, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, are going to be on the Switch 2 with an upgrade, and the upgrade already looks awesome. So the frame rate already looks better, like everything looks like it runs a lot better. But those are free with Nintendo Switch Online. So Nintendo has kind of taken a multifaceted approach with these upgrade packs. The games that have a paid upgrade pack appear that they're going to have a lot more features on top of the better graphics and everything like that. The 2 Zelda games being free if you have Nintendo Switch Online, I think it's brilliant. I think Nintendo Switch Online is a pretty decent service. I think it could be substantially better. I think there are areas for improvement, but it's a good service. And having another incentive like that, like being able to play the 2 Zelda games, moved over to the Switch 2 with the better performance, I like a lot. I like that they're going to go through and bring some games over that would benefit from the increased hardware, because we're at 7 to 8 years of the Nintendo Switch. Hardware cycles used to not be this long, and I think they're going to continue being long just because we're not getting the massive increase in power through technology innovation that we have in the past. Like, games used to be, black and white dots. They used to look like Pong, and eventually they could figure out graphics, and then the processors kept getting better. You had the cycle too where it was all 2D and then it went to 3D. That was pretty substantial. But there hasn't been another change. It's not like, virtual reality is the mainstay and everyone's doing that. Like, we haven't had a massive technological innovation. So I understand why the hardware is lasting a little bit longer. And it honestly makes sense. So personally, I think one of the best things that Nintendo did was grab a lot of the popular Wii U titles and bring them to the Switch. And I think they need to bring, they need to give everyone a second opportunity to buy these games if they didn't buy them on the Switch, with the better performance, with DLC, the 2 Zeldas, so Tears of the Kingdom in particular. I'm actually waiting to play that on the Switch too. So I'm pretty excited about that. Just from playing Breath of the Wild, like, I liked it. There were things that made it not feel like a Zelda game to me, but the game didn't run very well. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it runs on the Switch too. But yeah, the upgrade packs, I think Nintendo's looking at this of like, okay, you can play all your Switch 1 games on the Switch 2. That's a win. Hey, we're going to upgrade select titles for free or for like a $10 price to get you, enhancements on the Switch 2 hardware. I also like that. So I'm down for the upgrade packs as well. Now, I'm only going to use them for games that I haven't played, so I'm not going to actually upgrade any existing games that I already beat. Like Breath of the Wild, I'm not going to replay that. I've beat it. I've laid it to rest. I'm good to go. But Tears of the Kingdom, I've actually waited for. So I'm actually pretty excited about playing that on the Switch 2 with the better hardware. Last and certainly not least, one of my favorite announcements on the entire thing was Nintendo Switch Online offering GameCube games with 3 bangers right out the gate. This makes me so much happy. They announced so many more other games too, which are going to really, I think it's going to shake up the used game market a little bit because so many games on the GameCube were just trapped there. And like I said, I can go play the PS2, I can hook it up to Component, it looks great. You can hook up any of the old consoles fairly easily, honestly. But it's if you don't have the component cable for the GameCube, that suffers in particular. And the only other option to play that is on the Wii using the standard component cables. But then every time it's miserable. I do not want to ever turn a Wii on again. No, thank you. Like a lot of people would use that just to play GameCube games, but I'm just over the motion. I don't want to like select the GameCube disc, and maybe you can avoid that by through like a setting or something like that. But yeah, no, thank you. So I love the GameCube games. I want to play it. I bought a little what is it? It's a 480p CRT TV, but it's like a monitor, and you can pick it up. So it's pretty heavy, but it's manageable. And playing without the component cables, it's just too muddy. Like you need the minimum of 480p for that generation. It makes such a big difference. But they're going to have all kinds of GameCube games, coming out for it. They're starting off with 3 that I'm really excited about. Wind Waker, Soul Calibur 2 with Link in it, which is awesome. We talked about that earlier. And then F-Zero GX. So F-Zero GX was honestly, I think, the last like main F-Zero game. And I think they co-developed it with Sega. So it's like super arcadey, fast, crazy music. Looks awesome. So fun. Has a single player mode too, which I'm like really excited to play through again, which it was honestly really difficult. But I'm glad. And if this is Nintendo's way of bringing that back, that series back, F-Zero in particular, then I'm just happy that a new generation and new people that are experiencing this hardware might get to experience those games for like the first time. I feel like GX is such a great starting point. It was such an awesome game. It was a blast. I look fondly back on that game. And then you have Wind Waker. I have been wanting to play Wind Waker again, like so bad. And there's just, once again, not an easy way to play it. You're either doing the regular hardware or you got to hook up the Wii U, which once again, I don't want to hook up the Wii U. And even having save states, very curious as to if they're going to have the save states with it, which I'm assuming they will. They'll be releasing a GameCube specific controller, so a GameCube wireless controller that works with the Switch 2, which I will be buying that as well, because in my opinion, that's the way the games were meant to be experienced with that controller. And F-Zero GX, Soul Calibur 2. Let's talk about Soul Calibur 2 a little bit. Soul Calibur 2 sold best on the GameCube. So I don't know if those numbers have changed, but the GameCube, the Xbox, and the PlayStation each got an exclusive character. So the Xbox got Spawn, Nintendo got Link, who was by far the best and most awesome. And then I don't even know who PlayStation got. They got somebody from Tekken. So I guess it works out for them. But listen, we all know that getting Link as a playable character was absolutely awesome. Soul Calibur 2 had a lot of meat to it as well. There was a lot of like single player adventure based things you could do. That it had a story technically through all the characters. The Soul Calibur games are already awesome in general, but that one was even better because they brought in Link and they made it work. They did such a good job with it. Every character has a joke weapon. Like Link's joke weapon is the butterfly net, so you're just like smacking people with a butterfly net for catching bugs. But no, he transitioned so well into that game and just felt like he belonged. And it's funny because the whole gimmick is it's a weapons based fighting game, and I mean Link is all about items and weapons. So that one I'm so excited to be able to play again. I have all 3 of those games already, but I'm so excited to be able to play them. And that was such a nice way of once again differentiating the Switch 1 to the Switch 2, but saying like, hey, we have this additional power. We're bringing GameCube games. They are also bringing both Pokemon games, Colosseum and Gale of Darkness, which is absolutely huge. I think Gale of Darkness is like $400 on eBay. So they're going to be bringing a lot of like the big hitters. So I'm super pumped and excited about that because I want to play a lot of these games, and I feel like with the controller, with the GameCube controller, with Nintendo Switch Online, that's going to be the best way to play a lot of these games. And I cannot wait to sit down and play Wind Waker. That I'm most excited about that because I just haven't been able to revisit it, and I want to go back and play it to see how I remember it and everything like that. I remember it being a really good Zelda game, with a very polarizing development cycle and release. But it's looked back on fondly, and I do miss it. So I'm really excited to play that as well. And once again, I think it's another great thing from Nintendo to say, like, look at the software we're going to have for you for this new hardware. So if you are an early adopter, we're going to make sure that you have things to play with new exclusive games, third-party games that have never come out before, and upgrade packs, and we're going to throw in some GameCube games as well to kind of get you started. So all in all, I feel like this was the perfect starter set and launch window for like games. Like, not only are you going to have Mario Kart and Donkey Kong, you have some games coming in the future. You have upgrade packs. You're going to have GameCube games. You have a lot of third-party games that are going to be coming out as well. So I think Nintendo has done everything in their power that they need to do outside of launching this and getting this in people's hands and fighting off scalpers and everything like that to say, if you are coming from the Switch, you can play all your same games. We're going to give you we're going to give you free upgrade packs. There's going to be paid upgrade packs if you'd like. We're going to have new exclusive third-party games. We're going to have new exclusive first-party games. And this is going to be a piece of hardware worth buying. So I think at this point, Nintendo has done everything that they can do as a hardware manufacturer and as a developer. I think after you get through this first 3 to 6 months, it's time to hold another Nintendo Direct and kind of talk about like what's 2026 going to look like for the Switch 2, because you're going to want to get as many Switch 2s out there and in hands as you possibly can. You want a really strong launch and you want to carry on to that momentum. But ultimately, from a software standpoint, I think Nintendo has done what they need to do. So I'm pumped for the Switch 2. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and I hope you're excited about, the 10 or 11 games that we covered here today. Once again, this is BigReed signing off, and thank you for joining me on another episode of Gaming's Lost Memories.